Hi, this is Alec from easierhabits.com, and this episode is a conversation between me and my wife in which I demonstrate some reflective listening techniques. And I am always surprised at how a little extra thought on how I communicate with other people creates much better conversations. And this was no exception. My wife mentioned afterwards, I talk a lot more than usual in this one. And I'm realizing because I'm not bringing any of my own stories or judgments or comments into the situation, I'm really focusing on her, reflecting what she said, asking some questions, very occasionally bringing observations about my interactions with her in without judgment. She felt very free to express herself. It was a very positive conversation. You didn't get to see it after this, but after we stood up, there was just a lot of positive energy. And that is really what happens when you communicate well with your spouse. And so one of the things Meg and I offer is a communication workshop. It's 2 hours. We give you simple step-by-step ways to be a better communicator or a better listener. And we get a lot of positive feedback from young couples, from couples who have been married a long time, from couples on their second marriage. Wherever you are, a little more attention to how you communicate with your spouse can breed new insights, can breed a sense of understanding and support, and basically is the fuel that will help you overcome obstacles and deal with stress. So if you need to level up in your communication, if you're feeling a lot of stress or not feeling like the communication channels are distant, or if you have okay communication, but you want a little bit more to level up, we have people come in who have been to other communication workshops who are really blown away about how a few simple practices still, after all these years, help them reinvigorate their conversations, help them understand each other better, and help them be more supportive spouses. So anyway, if you're interested in this, please check the link in the description about the communication workshops. You can sign up for a 2-hour workshop. We understand that a lot of people are hurting for cash right now, and there's stressful times where a lot of couples need a little extra boost in their communication. So for a limited time, we're offering our workshops at $60. That means you can sign up for $60 and your spouse is free. It's 2 hours, and it is just a great way to get a little communication boost and strengthen your relationship in difficult times. So with that, enjoy the video, and I look forward to working with you soon.
Hi, I'm Alec. This is Meg. We're from easierhabits.com. We coach working parents in how to design lives of joy, growth, and balance. And today we have a special exercise. We're going to have a conversation, but I'm going to attempt to, in the course of this natural conversation, practice reactive listening. So we haven't scripted or outlined anything, but I'm going to try and make sure that I'm not interjecting myself, making judgments, making comments. I'm not trying to problem solve for Meg, but instead I am summarizing in my words what I'm hearing. I am normalizing what she's saying. So if she presents a worry or a fear or something that's common, I can help remind her, yeah, a lot of people have that, but I'm not going to then launch into a story about when I felt that. And then the other thing that I can do, of course, is ask open-ended questions and try to understand better. So that's what I'm going to try and do. And while this isn't a pure conversation, this is probably a lot closer to what it will look like when you yourself are attempting to integrate some kind of communication technique into your conversation. It doesn't feel 100% natural at first, but that's what it takes is practice. And I do promise, and I've seen this in my own life, where if you go intentionally through the steps of reflective listening and go through the points I listed before about what to avoid and what to try and include. It may feel a little awkward at first, but as you practice that, you will actually have conversations, even if they start out awkward, that get a lot deeper and a lot richer into what you need and your understanding of each other than if you just try and have a talk without any kind of plan.
And so kind of for my part, again, this is not a rehearsed conversation, but, Alec kind of mentioned, okay, well, let's talk about some of the things you've got going on. And I have a lot of things going on. And so we're going to kind of go through that discussion where I'll be laying things out and hopefully kind of in the process, figuring out any needs that I have to be able to communicate those in a, good non-confrontational way, or sometimes just seek to be understood, because there's times when you don't want to solve the problem. You just kind of want to talk. And I'm not a person who does that very often. So this is actually kind of a good exercise for me.
All right. So with that, what have you got going on?
Oh my gosh, what don't I have going on? So really, again, a lot of it, but I'll just kind of lay it out. I currently have 3 jobs that I get paid for, and then 2 jobs that I don't get paid for, and then a bunch of other stuff that I kind of do as part of my life. So I'll start with just like the basic life stuff. So we have a marriage that I want, and that's always kind of, one of the things at the forefront of my mind. It's not one of the things that worries me, but it's always, I always like starting with that because that tells me like my priority, because it is always.
Why is that your priority?
Well, it's my priority because like I choose you first, right? And anything else that comes after that, like that is icing on the cake. Sometimes it is like necessary, obviously. But I always, in my own mind, for my mindset, want to make sure that I remember that, because I have a tendency to kind of forget what's important, or I get so wrapped up into my projects. Like it would be really easy for me to be like, oh, I gotta work on stuff. Okay, no, I gotta work on stuff, and then I don't want you to feel ignored because I love you and I want you to feel that. So yeah, I always start with that first, and then obviously our kids are close second. Obviously, most of their needs are more pressing than a lot of yours. You don't need me to make you your food. You're very good at that yourself.
I appreciate it still.
Yay! Yeah, so I do, but but the boys obviously they need a lot more. They need me to drive them around. You have a license, things like that. But making sure that we're helping them because they've got school, they've got assignments, they have 2 different schools, so we have to kind of balance their time schedules, any healthcare stuff, or play dates, birthday parties, whatever, right? So all of the stuff that comes along with taking care of kids. And then we have our house, which I am not the best cleaner. I do laundry and things like that. And we've got kind of Saturday morning chores and everything, but making sure that things are kind of maintained there. You take care of most of our bills, so I don't have to worry about a lot of that, which is nice. Yeah, so those are all kind of the basic maintenance stuff, that involves other people. Obviously for myself, I want to keep exercising and stay healthy, eat well, have my own goals that I'm pursuing, do some fun stuff because I like fun stuff. So again, there's that. Now, as far as the jobs, right? So the 3 jobs that I get paid for, I am a tutor for people who are mostly from China at this point. And I have 5 regular clients that I see throughout the week. At all different times. Usually they have kind of a set time, but sometimes, things will change. I have a class that I am teaching on right now it's Tuesday and Thursday nights. And so, there's that I have to prepare for and grading and everything like that. But for that, I have to keep track of every client's, different needs, what their schedule is, how to track that, make sure I'm, keeping up with their progress, make sure that I'm billing on time and, giving progress reports for parents who need those. And we're reading Cry the Beloved Country with one of my students and Lord of the Flies with another. And I think we just finished, a little while back, I finished a Picture of Dorian Gray with another. So there's a lot of different things I have to do for each one of them.
And you make sure you read all of those novels too with them. So you're not just walking them through that, you're rereading those.
Yeah, or for my, AP US history, student, I go through all the AP stuff for her. So I'm really involved. I get paid well for it, but it's involved. So that's kind of, one of my jobs. Another one of my jobs, I have 2 clients for, and that is college prep work. So these are people who are applying for university or graduate school programs, again, coming from other countries, and they just don't know the processes. They start writing an essay, and it really looks like I don't want to say a really lame resume. That's harsh, but it's kind of I am really qualified for this school. Please let me into your school. And I'm like, okay, that is not what these universities are looking for. And so I help coach them through that process, and help with their English, because most of them, they're really, really good, but they're not native speaker And so that can be really involved, especially with multiple applications. We've got deadlines. I have a client whose deadline is today, tonight, at midnight. So I have to make sure that all of her stuff is in line, that she's got everything filled out properly on her application before, we click submit.
So that means you're literally going through all of the college requirements and checking each box.
And I even help them decide which program. So with this particular client, she's applying for grad school, and she's like, well, I want to do finance. And I'm like, oh gosh, Well, okay, well, let's, where do we start with that? So then I go through all of the, different schools that have the best programs and the different types of programs. Does she want MBA? Does she want a master's? What are her goals in that? So I do coaching a lot, with that. And but for each school, then I have to say, okay, what does this school need? What does this school need? A lot of this stuff does overlap, but it's a fair amount of work. My third job that I just started this last week. See, and I'm a crazy person. Like, I actually really like this. I like having a lot of stuff to do. So for me, this is cool. But just this last week, I started teaching gymnastics to like little kids, 3 to 5 year olds. And one of the classes that I teach is I'm not actually teaching, I'm just supervising. It's a like free open playtime where parents bring their kids in, and it's so much fun because the kids get to play, we play music, I get to talk to the parents. And, we have like just these mini, I don't want to call them sessions because they're not, but, I check in with them and see how they're doing and how their kids are doing. And they have a chance to kind of like offload and talk and be like, oh my goodness, so that's really nice. And then my other one is a superheroes class, which is so much fun, but does require a lot of energy. And so I'm running around and I'm talking a lot. Is this okay?
I noticed you're talking a lot, and it's okay. This is your time. This is your conversation.
Okay.
So,
well,
if this is where you want to go with it, that's great.
I'm sorry if I'm boring you, just like telling you all of the things that are going on in my life. But you can fast forward if you want.
And this is just the job to get paid for. You're still getting into
I know, that's
the 2 side projects, I assume one of which is helping me with the coaching stuff that we're just starting, right?
Yeah. And so there's that. So yeah, I've got, a superhero class, whatever. And then, so what you were talking about, like this, with these new ventures, a while back you were like, okay, I really want to focus on this coaching. And I've wanted to be a coach forever. I took coach training back in 2015 and, got certified and everything like that, but I just wasn't into the marketing stuff. And so, and then life happened.
And then, like you mentioned, you do coaching actually regularly, and many of the things you do, you just don't market yourself as a life coach.
Exactly.
Because the marketing part is hard, and it's hard for me too.
Well, it's hard and it's not exciting. And sometimes I have a hard time doing things that are not fun. Or at least interesting or pose a challenge that I feel like.
So you have like a long list of things you're willing to do. Like you're very active, you're doing a lot, you're working hard, but like it has to be in a certain vein.
Yes.
Like there's like, and I think that's true of a lot of people where, you may feel lazy, but a lot of times that's just because you're not actively letting yourself do the things that interest you, right? As soon as you let yourself explore something, like, why don't I teach a class at YMCA? You pick that up, and I see you very motivated and very, very excited. And I do notice, actually, going back to one comment you said earlier, where you make a priority for me, I actually saw that last night because you were working, and you took some time out to just like watch some anime with me. And then you went back to work. And so, I really appreciate that you took that time out. And I also observed that your bedtime was a little bit later than usual because of that. I did appreciate that.
It's nice to be noticed. But also, I love, spending time with you. So that always does take priority. I want to help you with all of this, coaching stuff, and as much as I can. We've done some couples, coaching sessions, which have been really fun. And so being able to be a part of that has been really awesome. And then kind of just like, passing back ideas, doing videos like this. Like this I love. Oh my gosh, this is so much fun. And then my other kind of side project, I don't know exactly how much of it, I should tell or should not tell, but I have a friend who is working on a Broadway musical. And I helped her with some things related to it back in like 2008. But recently she needed my Japanese expertise for some contacts that she had in Japan. And so all of a sudden I've dived into that world, and I'm not only helping her with the Japanese and the translation and the interactions, with Japanese culture, but also I've been able to help her with script ideas and copy editing and kind of, bouncing things back and forth as she kind of finalizes everything for it. And I love it so much. I don't get paid for any of it yet. Hopefully there will be money at some point, but it's been a wonderful passion project. And so, kind of as I'm going through all of these things, the stuff that, pops into my head is I am really busy right now. And I love being busy, but I'm also worried that at some point a plate is going to drop. Like I'm spinning all of these plates and it's really awesome and great while I can show them off to people.
Yeah.
But then they're going to start falling because like life happens. COVID happened and everything fell apart. I have health issues, right? And sometimes I'm just tired. Like last week I went to bed after sending, our oldest to school. And I went to sleep for 3 hours because I was so tired.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. And so I want to make sure that I'm gauging my own kind of level of ability while still pushing myself, because it's also easy for me to be like, life is too hard. I'm just going to go like do dot art and play with Legos and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like it's so easy to fall too far one way or the other. And so for me, finding that balance and making sure that like things are okay as I work towards my own growth, towards the growth of other people, while I manage multiple different things. And so like that is what I worry about most is some of those professional or personal relationships. Like, I still have time to kind of hang out with friends with kids, right? And so like I'm able to maintain some semblance of a social life. And there's church, and there's like I keep having all of these things pop into my mind, and I usually try not to think about it. I just try to like go.
How does that work for you?
The just not thinking about it.
Yeah.
I can do it for a while, honestly. Like sometimes that is better than ruminating. So I'm not going to say that's always a bad thing, but then there are also times when I start getting into those behavioral patterns and I don't realize that I'm in a rut, right? Or more likely than not, certain self-care things, like stop happening. So, and these aren't things like, I'm not giving myself nice, long baths and stuff. This is like, I forget to brush my teeth or I forget to take a shower. Not because, I don't want to take a shower, but it's just one more thing, right? And I'm like, I can do that later. I want to work on this first. Or then I get so burnt out at times that all I can do is something that is mindless. And I know that's something that you've kind of, faced as well.
Yeah. Waves of hyperproductivity.
Yeah.
And then you kind of burn out and follow at, fall into distracting yourself from, the overproducticity, the overstress, at a certain point, even if it's fun, it can become too much.
Yeah. Well, and then I also don't always realize, and it will take a while. So many of these projects are new, right? As in within the last couple of months.
Yeah.
The tutoring's been going on for a while, but everything else, other than like kids and you, like it's all new. And so like it's working for me now, but if I don't at some point think about it, I will get to the point where something's not working for me anymore, but I won't realize it and I'll just keep pushing through like it is.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you kind of take a look once for like, a period of time and kind of figure out like what's the schedule for all of these things. And then you shut that part of your brain down so that you don't have to constantly be analyzing and you just run with it for an extended period of time until like something more drastic catches your attention.
And I've done that before in my life where I'm like, okay, this is the life path, and then I won't revisit it for like a couple of years. I feel like I've been better about that in recent history. I think partially because things happen in life when you have kids, when you have COVID, when you have whatever, that force you to reevaluate. And so in those ways, I'm kind of grateful for those things. But if, there are no major upsets, then yeah, I'm just going to keep going and not remember, oh yeah, I need to like do that reevaluation and make sure that everything is still good. So.
Yeah. Well, and we have in the past done kind of, this is where we see ourselves in a year or a couple of years. COVID actually influenced that. We had like a 3-year plan, but we hit COVID at the 2-year mark, and we're just like, well, all right, let's just go ahead with the plan because we kind of had it in, we had it in the chamber as like, yeah, I want to work for myself. We want a little bit more freedom. We want a house. which, you know, in COVID, when you're stuck at home a lot more, you know, that was huge for us, lowering costs, etc. So yeah, a lot of stuff came together. You know, so you expressed a few worries, like you worry about burnout, or worry about like dropping a particular plate, or worry about just going along a particular path and then figuring out or not figuring out that things are changing and not adapting to that. Like which one of those are you most worried about?
Honestly, the thing that I'd be most worried about are the relationships involved in any of these projects. Again, because all of the people that I work with or interact with, I feel very strongly about, right? I love the people that I work with. And so the dropping of a plate negatively affecting one of those relationships is probably the thing that I'm most worried about. So, you know, whether, you know, it's you or, you know, one of my partners with whom I'm doing the, you know, college prep stuff, or you know, any of my clients, right, that I tutor, or you know, just those people that, like, some of them I've known for quite a long time now, and yeah, I don't like disappointing people, right?
Yeah.
You know, and so like I'm not worried. Like, burnout's not fun, but I've dealt with it before, and I know I can get through it. And I know a lot more like healthy coping strategies for burnout these days. And I know sometimes when I'm getting close to my limits that I'm like, okay, I need some space. I need something that's mindless and enjoyable. And so that's good. But I don't like negatively affecting other people. Right. And so that for me is probably the biggest worry.
With like the college prep stuff, I mean, you mentioned last night that that's like ending, right?
Well, the season is ending, right? So, I mean, most college applications are due within the next month. And so, you know, all of those big deadlines, but the partner with whom I'm working for, like with Napa Academy, right, Bailey, like, I freaking love her. And she is an amazing support for me. And we've had lots of various things that we've tried to start or whatever. But that is a really important relationship to me to, you know, foster and make sure that even when this is, you know, this portion is done, there's going to be something else, right? Because she's got the most entrepreneurial spirit I've ever seen. And she's always like, okay, well, what's next? What's next? What's next? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? And I'm like, yes. Wait, just a second. Right? You know, and so making sure that I don't step too far. Because I value that so much. And I love the work that we do together. And so, you know, I'm willing to try anything, you know, oftentimes. And this has been a particularly successful one. So.
Yeah, it's been exciting. I had a good time meeting Bailey.
She's wonderful.
Yeah.
Bailey, if you're watching this, I love you. She probably will watch this.
Nice. Yeah, so yeah, there's a lot of relationships going on there. Like, is there any plate that you can put down if you're worried about juggling too many at a particular point?
Probably. So, like, teaching at the Y is an experiment. And even my manager, like, she knows that. So I signed on for 6 weeks. It's a 6-week course. And if at the end of that it's too much, because that is, you know, very, like, you have to be here on these days or whatever. I can't do it remotely. I have to be there in person, which most of my other work is remote. It sometimes is time bound, but I can at least do it from wherever. So if that's not working, I can drop that one. Let's see, something that you had mentioned actually before this, back before, again, and this was just like a month ago, you know, I was going to be helping you with some of the marketing stuff, doing Pinterest and everything. And I was really excited to do that. And then all of a sudden, all of this stuff came out of the woodwork and was like, hey, Meg, can you do this and this and this? And I'm like, ooh, there's money there. And, oh, this is a really cool project. And so I started to say yes to everything.
Yeah.
Right. And now I feel bad because I'm like, oh no, things changed. And now I don't have time for that. And you, again, being the incredibly, like, understanding person you are like, well, let's revisit that. Right. You know, do you still have time? And I'm like, I don't know if I do. And I don't want to say that because I'm like, but you're,
So, and this is something I've observed, you do pick up things that you're interested in. You do say yes to a lot of things. And that is kind of one default way you kind of find the things that actually work for you.
Well, yeah,
is that you keep saying yes. until the things that you actually weren't as excited about, and like you mentioned, marketing, not that into
No.
that they fall out. So I think there's like a certain amount where it's just like I observed like, well, first actually I felt a little bit like guilty. I haven't followed up with her on that, and then I realized like, oh, she's probably just not doing it, and I could probably just talk to her about that and let go, because I'm focusing on marketing. I recognize like marketing is a lot of what I'm doing right now, or a lot of what I'm learning, because it's hard for me too.
Yeah.
And so I think I don't. So I observe that I don't necessarily view. I'd appreciate the help. So if you do get back to where you were, that'd be great. But I forwarded that partially because you were at a place where you weren't doing a lot. It was one of your phases.
I was so bored, and I was like, "What do I do?"
Yep, yeah. And so I kind of recognized like, all right, well, if you have extra time, try this. And then I saw you filling up your schedule, and I do wonder, like, to a certain extent, is the filling up your schedule a reaction to being asked to do something you don't want to do?
And sometimes I would think possibly, except like this time it was people asking me, right?
Okay,
I wasn't seeking out any of
it's
these
true.
opportunities.
The YMCA people talk to you.
They
Do
asked
you remember
me.
that?
The class thing that I'm doing was a request. The college stuff was a request. The Broadway stuff was a request. Like,
that's true.
All of it, people are finding me. And so, like, I would say, yeah, I'm amazing at finding all of these opportunities. I'm not, right? And sometimes I think, like, do I need to be more proactive and stuff? But then, I don't know. I do feel like, one of the ways I operate is to say yes to a lot of things and then see kind of what fits.
Yeah, well, and I noticed that one of the things that works for you that I don't have as much, because I'll tend to focus more on one pursuit, is like by doing a lot of things, you build a lot of kind of casual networks. And studies have shown that like casual networks are like the number one way that you get new opportunities, and they're really powerful. And so like that's why it's working this way, because you do go out and hang out with people at the YMCA, because you are chatting with people on Facebook or in Facebook groups, so that you notice when your friend says, hey, I want someone who understands Japanese to help me with this. And so that is just kind of like a part of your lifestyle. And what you do. And it's not necessarily what I do. I don't create a lot of secondary frameworks. I like to like focus in on a project, do that thing, hopefully get to a point where I feel like I can actually see an impact skill-wise personally with that thing. But for me, it's like a lot of skill acquisition and like learning, whereas you do have like very broad, like relationship-based focus to all these things, like and create these broad networks of people.
It's fun. I mean, I think I get bored if I do one thing for too long. And so I like having the broad kind of expansive. I have so many different types of skills that I get to use, which is fun. And so, it does. It works for me. And I enjoy it. I need that sense of urgency sometimes to actually get me to do stuff. Because if there's no sense of urgency, I'm like, oh, I can always just do it later. Let's go take a nap. Because I love naps. Cool. So now I take naps out of necessity, not out of pleasure.
Nice. It's a better way to take naps.
I think so. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess, like, there's a part of me, I just have to, like, observe, like, it wants to problem solve, like, well, what else could I help you drop?
No, don't help me drop it.
Well, or put down, like, how, so do you think you can continue at this pace indefinitely?
Indefinitely, probably not, but for the time being, yeah.
Sure.
Like, I'm not worried about dropping any of the plates anytime soon, again, because so many of them are new ventures.
Right.
The thing that is going to be difficult is if any one of them starts to take off so much that I do need to devote more specific time to that one, because I love them all. And so at that point, it's not because of burnout, it's just because of limitations on time. And I'm going to have to say no to something which will be sad.
Yeah.
I know that any one of these people that, I work with and everything would be very understandable about it. And at the same time, like, I don't know, I like doing everything. But there are certain ones that I'm like, okay, if that were to take off and if that were like a full-time thing, I would probably drop the other ones. Yeah. Right? And that's kind of a scary thing for me, knowing that could be somewhere in the next, year or two or whatever.
And I'm guessing that YMCA gymnastics with kids is not one of your Dreamscape ones.
No,
Even though it's fun.
No, it's fun. It's enjoyable, and
You kind of mentioned that as one. You know, after 6 weeks, you could like put down.
I can reevaluate. So yeah, that one,
is
is lower. As much as I love tutoring, that would probably be a lower priority one. Especially if coaching were to take off. I much prefer helping people with life design than just like tutoring them in English. Which is good and useful and needed. But I like those kind of deeper conversations, which is why I do them with so many of my students.
Yeah, so even when you were running an English teaching school in Japan, and that was like your thing, and it was like your one thing at the time, I remember seeing you get so excited about the lessons in which you were helping them discover like what they wanted to study at college, because it was people preparing to go to a college in the US. And so like, that coaching part of things you brought into there and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and that's the class that I teach right now. So that's really fun. So doing things like that, right, that help people on kind of a macro scale, right, and help them figure out what they need to get those micro things, right, but doing that overview and helping them, with mindset and everything like that. So like that is, ideally where I'd like to go. I mean, I've always, said my absolute ideal, thing would be to like travel the world and sample spa packages so that I could, set up like life coaching retreats for people in this like idyllic, Tahiti type environment or something like that. Something so ridiculous that like, but also pretty awesome. But the idea,
would you be running those life coaching retreats, or would you be like consulting with like, I don't know, Tony Robbins or something like that and being like, let me help you find a destination.
Oh my gosh, that would be so cool. See, and that's the thing. Like I hear these ideas and I'm like, oh my gosh, that would be so cool. But again, the closest thing to any dream that I have, and again, it's a completely different dream, right, is helping with this Broadway musical thing. Because it blends my loves of music and theater and arts and Japanese and anime and all of that, and working with people and helping communication, like facilitate all of that, helping people with their dreams is so much a part of that. And so like that fits my dream life in a whole completely different way. And I think that's one of the things that I'm like, oh my gosh.
Not so much coaching like you have in some of your other ventures, or like teaching. So there's different aspects. I mean, and that's what I notice is there's a lot of things that would be nice to do, but your way of working for it isn't being like, all right, this is specifically what I want to do. I'm going to
work for it.
Yeah, I'm going to like work backwards, construct a plan. It's more of like, these are things I like to do, and recognizing when opportunities engage multiple elements of that for you and kind of seeing where that goes.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I've noticed in all of my reading with, lifestyle design and things like that, is that there are different ways of doing it. Some people, they start from the end and they work their way forward. And I feel like that's good, especially in like the earlier years when you're deciding your education or deciding whatever. But one thing that I used to do is I would make those plans and I would start to follow them, and something would change and I wouldn't know how to adapt the plan. So then I threw out the plans altogether and I was like, well, and that didn't work, and so then what I've taken is, kind of having overarching goals and having certain things that I can work towards, but again, being more focused on the process of like, okay, here's where I am right now. What are the processes that will get me closer to a life that I want, right? So one of the exercises I do is, have people talk about their ideal day and what does that look like for you? And for me, I used to think it was so different from the life that I live now. But I look and I'm actually living my ideal day a lot of the time these days. If you're talking about like a regular day, no, I'm not like on the beach, sipping like sparkling water and, enjoying the sun or whatever. Like that's an ideal vacation day, but that's not a realistic, like everyday day.
Right.
And I would get bored with that. Right. And so, but the idea of having a good balance between, kids and, personal goals and work and everything like that. And I was able to get to that point by looking at the processes that I needed to be doing rather than any specific goal that I needed to achieve. Does that make sense?
So you kind of knew what you were looking for and what that would look like in a day, and then it kind of as opportunities to do those sorts of things arose, you took them. I mean, some of that like is the conversation we've had back and forth about like, hey, I need this time or that time. Some of it like you volunteered getting up with the kids and making their lunches and taking our oldest off to the bus stop so that I could do morning routine stuff. I've tried to jump in and go, because you mentioned like having to wait super long for the coming home bus, right? So,
oh gosh,
yeah. And so I just jumped in. I'm like, all right, that'll actually make me go outside during the day, which I have to remember to do today. And then, you know, like I can read a book or something like that. So it's like a nice break for me. So yeah, there's like some of that negotiation about like how do we do times and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, and you've also, because I usually hit a place in the day where I'm like, oh, I'm so brain dead, right? Because of all of these things. And it's my witching hour, usually, you know, around dinner time or just after dinner or whatever. And you kind of stepped in, you know, there with the boys, like you take the boys after dinner and get them to do their you know, evening cleaning and, you know, do some like music lessons or, you know, whatever with them, right? So that I can either go chill or, you know, sometimes I'll have tutoring scheduled at that point as well. But that's a hugely beneficial time for me to decompress and like that. Yeah, I feel like that's just a really nice routine that we've settled into. So yeah, figuring out like what that day flow looks like and what it feels like, I think also is important. Like, because you might think you want one thing, and I've done that a lot. Where well, I want to, you know, wake up at 5 a.m. and do yoga, and then do my, you know, half-hour meditation, and then, you know, get our kids off to school with beautifully like healthy organic food, you know, breakfast and lunches or whatever. Like there's things that sound nice, but in actuality they don't serve me the way that I think they will. And so trying out a bunch of different things, seeing how they feel and being like, okay, yeah, this is good. You know, it's a lot more amorphous than I feel like I have tended to be in the past, where I'm like, okay, I need this and this and this. But now I'm like, no, like this is good. Or maybe more is good. Let's try. So
yeah, the little tweaks here and there.
Yeah.
And that's a pattern I've seen with a lot of other people where like some of their happiest weeks aren't necessarily a big promotion or or you know, some big family change or other things. It's just like they've tweaked the little things enough that they find themselves living a lot closer to their ideal day.
And it's a wonderful place to be. So I'm so grateful to be here right now, in that any stressors that I do have are generally self-inflicted. You know, again, there's the insanity going on with the world, and I can't even begin to address that. But as far as my own personal life, the life of our family, our immediate family, like things are really good, and I feel so blessed and excited, you know, about what the future is going to bring, as opposed to worried. You know,
and I know I inflict some of the stresses of the world on you by talking politics.
Yes, you do, and I love you.
All right, well, I'm starting to worry about like camera battery life, but one comment I just make about this: we will make a his and hers video where we actually like pause and show like what we're thinking in captions or voiceover. I haven't decided, but we'll make those just so you can kind of get behind the camera and get our reactions. You know, we'll write down what we remember now. Some of that will be like reactions after watching the video, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But one of the things I noticed is like I really would have, if I were trying to lead the conversation, troubleshoot a whole lot more about the worries, because it'd be like, oh, I don't want you to have to drop something and feel embarrassed or whatever. And then I realized like you weren't, like you recognized that was something you don't want to happen, but like you weren't really dwelling there. And
I'm
so,
not
like,
stressing about it now.
Yeah,
you know?
And so I'm like, oh, I think that's just something she'll figure out when she gets there. And so instead of like trying to like problem solve that for you, you know, what I heard was just like following your discussion of a lot of gratitude, and like I would think it was a better conversation because I wasn't trying to leave it there. But you can check me on that.
No, actually, yeah. I think if you had focused on the stressor part, then I would have focused on the stressor part more. And been like, wait, should I be stressed? Should I drop something now? Like, because I second guess myself all the time.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, for me, I don't express a problem unless there's a real problem, usually. And so like I might talk about something, but I don't like, I don't know, if I were stressed enough to feel like I needed to drop something, I would have said I need to drop something and I need to figure out which one. But I'm not. Like I'm in a place of enjoyment. It's high activity, but it's not, something where I feel the need to change anything right now. Right? If that makes sense. And part of this too, I'm really, an independent, functioner, right? And
Yeah.
and I have a hard time asking, for things. But also because of that, like I don't need to ask for things as often. Right.
Yeah.
Like I would figure it out, again, like you said, and would let but.
And I think it's more, I'd have to recognize, I mean, if the Pinterest thing, it was an experiment, right?
Yeah.
But if I'd really been depending on that, I would have had to like raise that issue sooner. Or, if things get crazy. And I think this is just the experiment, the experience that we had going to Japan, coming back, like those adjustments were crazy hard on our family. And we had a lot more charged, tense conversations that were like, I need this and I'm not getting it a lot more.
Yes.
And I think what we came out of that is realizing if we have those conversations sooner without as much of like the feeling the chronic need and built up, that, they wouldn't be as charged.
Yeah.
And when we were having them more regularly, it was really hard. We had a scheduled night where we had them. And that helped us, be more intentional, practice some of these things about using I language rather than judgmental language and whatnot that we were very intentional about. But then after a while, like that became normal enough. We don't necessarily do that, although we do check in like most often Sundays, just when we're planning the week. And a lot of that's right now pretty functional in terms of like, what are we going to do? But like, if there's something we stressed about, or like if I have a question about like how something's going for you, I ask it there, and you can kind of tell me whether it's going well or not good. And we kind of dive into that. But yeah, it's a lot more like we can do it on the fly now.
Yeah. As opposed to having to have that scheduled space.
As opposed to having the scheduled space or like just letting it build up.
Yeah.
And so, there's a part of me that's like, all right, I want to like on camera do like, some kind of bring up something tense, something difficult to work through. That's really not us most of the time. Gonna give you a massage later.
Yes, please. Yeah,
right.
but yeah, I mean, right now we're in a pretty good spot, right?
And to a certain extent, you just have to trust, like, instead of ruminating on like what'll happen if I do like to have a plan B, or like what'll I do if this goes wrong, and like the plan B is just like, oh, when we start getting stressed, we'll have to sit down and have a conversation, and then we can check in about like what to move around or take out, or what I can help with, or what you can help with, etc.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome.
All right, well, thank you very much. Like I said, we'll have a his and hers version of this with some commentary, because sometimes it's helpful to see what's going on in people's heads during certain parts of conversations, and it'll just be fun. So if you like this video, if this has been helpful for you, go ahead and share it. If you have any commentary either on reflective listening part or balancing lots of priorities, your own experience trying to figure out kids, work, family, passion projects, please share those in the comments below. Love hearing from you. And until next week, make big changes, one small habit at a time.